He has been a happy Fairfax County resident for over 30 years. He studied engineering in college with a master's in information systems from the University of Virginia and another master's in public policy and administration from Northwestern University. He has worked in financial, technology consulting, and advisory firms in the Washington area, offering information technology and management consulting services. His wife, Chiruta, who gets to be at the back to take some photos of this event, is a therapist in the Inova hospital system. They have 2 daughters who have graduated from Fairfax County Public Schools and then from the University of Virginia. Enjoys classical and popular music. He didn't weave music into the novel, so you have to fill that gap with the next one, okay? And is a self-taught keyboard player. He likes to read both nonfiction and fiction, and has over time developed a keen interest in ancient, modern, and contemporary history and linguistics. Raaz Mahal, The Palace of Secrets, is his first writing adventure. First writing adventure or first fiction writing adventure?
I would say first big writing adventure.
Big writing adventure, okay. It's a research-based novel and has received the BookFest Fall 2022 award, and it's available in multiple formats: paperback, ebook, and Kindle, hard copy, and audiobook, and has been translated into 2 international languages. Okay. Now I am going to turn my mic off, and we'll watch this, and we'll go from there.
All right. So first of all, thank you, Ms. Smith-Cohen, for the introduction. Many thanks to Ms. Dawn, the librarian here, for arranging this program. Thanks to Fairfax County Public Library for hosting me and giving me an opportunity to come here and talk to all of you. And above all, thanks to all of you for coming here. Readers, would-be readers, fellow citizens from the county. Raaz Mahal, the Palace of Secrets. You must be wondering what really Raaz Mahal means. So Raaz is a Persian word, Persian language word, which means secret. So Raaz means secret, and Mahal means a palace, a mansion, and again, it's a word that's used in Indian languages as well as Middle Eastern languages. Hence, Raaz Mahal, the Palace of Secrets, kind of a redundant name, but that's how I came up with the name. So you must be wondering whether this rhymes with something, and some people already know that, right? So Raaz Mahal rhymes with the Taj Mahal, the famous the World Heritage Monument in India. And of course, this novel is about the Taj Mahal. So let's look at this. So the novel really starts, goes back to 1600s. So that's the kind of map of India, circa 1600, if you will. Up in the north, you will see the historic cities of Agra and Delhi. Agra is where Taj Mahal is located. And so the novel kind of goes in sort of 4 or 5 parts, if you will. It starts with the 1630s, the legend. So really what happened, how Taj Mahal came into existence according to the legend. Most importantly, what happened in 1630s was the Mughal ruler Shah Jahan, his wife Mumtaz Mahal, or so we call her. She died in the 1630s. Then what happened? Was there something peculiar about her death? Was there something peculiar about her burial? Where was she buried? What happened after her burial? And then maybe 50, 60 years ago, after that, there were some interesting incidents at the Taj Mahal that led to some potential architectural changes. Maybe. The story then moves into 1960s when a Delhi University professor, Dr. Roy, he's researching into Taj Mahal, and he wants to present his findings to the highest official in the country. Is he able to do that? What happens to him? What are his findings? And really, what happened to his report? Where did it go? Does anyone know? Maybe. The story then moves into the present times. In the present times, the Bureau of Archaeology receives an interesting RTI petition. RTI stands for Right to Information. It's an act similar to what we have in the US as a Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. Some of you might know FOIA. So the Bureau of Archaeology receives an interesting petition, and the petition says, okay, tell me all the evidence behind the legend of the Taj Mahal. Then the story moves into the pursuit of the evidence behind the Taj Mahal, and then it moves into part 5, which is the revelation with a question mark as to what exactly the petition or the research kind of reveals. So the back of the book cover story goes like this. So the Bureau essentially dumps the case onto Vijay Kumar. He's a brilliant maverick, bit eccentric, an engineer turned archaeologist. But Vijay Kumar, he has a past too. He has a history. I mean, his past and history is going to sort of affect his research and his work also. But Vijay Kumar realizes that the intentions of his supervisors for dumping the case onto him are little suspect. Then he also finds out that his colleagues, the team that he has been given to work on this case, their motivations are also not clear. Are they really trying to support him? Are they against him? Is something stopping them, hindering them? And to add to that, there is an alert from the Interpol to Government of India and UNESCO that gold coins and jewels are coming from the tombs of the Taj Mahal, and they are appearing on the international market. Add to that, there are some mysterious deaths around the RTI petition, and also a body is found in the lower chamber of the Taj Mahal. So Vijay Kumar finds himself in the thick of the situation, where he cannot really trust anyone. And he embarks on a pursuit, including an international pursuit, not only just in India, but international pursuit. And then the question remains, has someone set him up? And is he going to be able to reveal the truth? Is he in danger? And then the ultimate question remains, will the truth come to the surface, or will the truth remain as Raaz? And that's why Raaz Mahal. So that's kind of the high level story of writing our fiction novel at all. But 4 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, I came across some interesting references or material about the Taj Mahal, in the legend of the Taj Mahal. As you would know, most of us actually know a very high-level story of the Taj Mahal, including those in India, which is the Taj Mahal was built by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan for his wife Taj Mahal. It took 22 years, 20,000 laborers. The architects came from Italy, Persia, and both of them are buried in the Taj Mahal. That's the story most of the people know, including people in India. You would assume that, of course, the history and archaeology department has more details, and that's fine. So I came across an interesting reference, public domain reference about the Taj Mahal. And I started to pick my interest. I started reading more and more about it. Then one reference led to another reference. That reference led to another reference. So it took almost like 6-7 months, maybe a year. I just kept on researching. And at the end of a year, I had maybe 20, 25 very interesting references about that one. Public domain references, but maybe they were not looked into the way I was looking at it. And these are public domain references. They are actually, you can look them up. After collecting those 20, 25 references, I started sharing those with my friends and family. Hey, look, what is this? This is interesting. And then the thought was, what do we do with these references? Maybe should I write a thesis or something? But then who will read it? I mean, right now I'm not associated with any university history department per se. Maybe we'll try. So the discussion led to a thought that maybe write a novel around. So write a story and sort of embed these references. Would that work? I said, I don't know. I have not written a novel per se, but let's give it a try. So I started putting together a storyline,
And I told my wife also and friends, hey, I don't think I'm writing the whole novel. I'll write maybe 2 or 3 pages of a storyline, and then maybe have somebody else work on it. But then those 2 or 3 pages, they turned into 300 pages. And it literally happened. It's about 6 or 7 months. I had my first draft. Of course, the draft changed later on much after going through the entire editing process, review process. But essentially, that's how the book came to be about.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Sure.
How is it selling in India?
It's doing well. We'll talk about some of the references also. Maybe a little jumping ahead. But essentially, people are quite curious. Some of the comments have been, I need to go and see Taj Mahal again. They have been there, but after reading this now, I need to go. It's a completely different perspective. So that's great. Some people are also looking at, hey, can a movie be made on this? I mean, it's written as a fast-paced novel. The whole story occurs in like 10 to 12 days. When Vijay Kumar gets the petition and then he has to provide the report, the whole thing happens in 10 to 12 days. His pursuit, he goes on an international pursuit. So far very good. To add to that, actually, 2 publishers in India, they translated into 2 Indian languages also. Marathi is one language and Hindi is another language. So those came out just a few months ago. So interest is growing.
Excellent. So, you already answered some of this, but are you similar to Kumar in having the engineering background and the archaeological curiosity? Do you think of yourself as having his mindset in what drove you to research this?
I don't know. I think the Vijay Kumar is much more patient guy. I'm a little more impulsive. So, but maybe the logical thinking, kind of the
Well, he has a
approach,
very intentional how you research and find the details. This chart, hand-drawn chart, very detailed, which his team is impressed with. Took a lot of detail.
Right. I mean, that may have come from my own consulting background. We make a PowerPoint presentation, we get into teams, draw some whiteboarding. So it might have come from that. But essentially, I was looking at someone who will look at these references, and when these references are given, who's kind of neutral to it. He's not kind of bought into it, or he has no bias to it. He has no skin in the game, and how he will look at those. So I wanted somebody who is kind of, hey, I don't care, whatever, you have given me a case, I'm going to work on this case. But once you put me on a case, I will use my logical approach.
And let's see, there are other members of his team, and I was going to say, I think my sense was that you consciously chose a very diverse profile of backgrounds as well as motives for the team, and I wanted to find out a little bit more about that. Also, when I read British procedurals, then I have to refresh my memory on Scotland Yard titles. And I don't know anything about titles, but there's a Maulana and Inspector and various other roles. And I'm wondering how much that would be known to someone reading a similar book in India, or whether you had to do a lot of research to understand who would get this request, this RTI, and how would that team be constituted, and how would they make an assignment and respond? What would be the obligation of public publishing?
Yeah, so I did do some research around that. Although the RTI procedure that I use in the book is probably not exactly how they do it, I'm sure it's a little more dry. I try to make it a little more exciting. But I would say similar things have happened. The RTI petition turns to be kind of sometimes controversial, and people have lost life. So those references are based on my reading, my experience. Yes, RTI petition can turn out to be dangerous. It's like whistleblower. Somebody blowing whistle, then he's in danger.
Sorry. When may I?
Sure.
When did you first go yourself? When did you first go to the Taj Mahal?
Long time ago.
Right, but a child.
As a child, yeah.
there are lots of victims in the book. When you were first talking, I was thinking you're skipping all the bodies, but there are victims, and there's a trip to London as well, which plays a significant part in the plot and so on. And I kept thinking, when you get to the end of the chapter, so often there's a dun dun dun. There's very much that feel of, oh no, there's another body. However, there are lots of procedural markers through the book, and I wanted to talk a little bit about those, if that's all right. So there's a woman in white who appears several times in the book, and made me curious about the importance or cultural roles of ghosts in India, and I wondered if you had anything you wanted to say about that.
That's an interesting question. First, let's talk about the woman in white. One thing I think you must have noticed, the woman in white, and she's seen by multiple characters, but she is their imagination. It's not that she's really a character per se. The characters are thinking that they're seeing someone. So it's not that the ghost is really have a role per se. So that's kind of an important difference. As far as ghosts are concerned, I don't think I'm an expert on ghost stories at all. Ghosts, I think people are fascinated by ghost stories everywhere. Generally, what I know is ghosts are generally dissatisfied spirits. When you die and a desire remains, I think you turn into a ghost or a spirit, and then you wander till that desire is satisfied by some means, and sometimes maybe through some other being also will satisfy that desire, and then you are liberated. So that's how but my main intention behind using the woman in wheel was to add another kind of a dimension, because people told me, hey, this is now getting into a kind of a different dimension, right? There is a ghost story, supernatural, if you will. But the goal was not to introduce her as a character per se.
Are there other questions? Yes.
I have two. First up, I want to follow up because I don't think you answered her question. And so I want to follow up with that to put you on the spot.
Okay.
And so that is, are there any cultural differences between India and this country about the stories of ghosts?
Truly, I don't think I know that. So I told you what I heard and what I know about ghosts. Of course, I like the movie Ghostbusters. If you have seen that movie, it's a lovely movie. Then the other movie with Patrick Swayze, and I forgot her name.
Ghosts.
Yeah, so I think those similar stories are there in India also. Patrick Swayze and what's her name? I forgot.
Demi Moore.
Yeah, Demi Moore. Yeah, so those stories are, I would say, kind of similar. Yeah.
Okay. My other question was, are there any characters in the book which are representatives of actual people that you know?
I want to keep a few things close-hold. Some characters are based on some characters that I've researched. Are they exactly the same? No. I will, first of all, my disclaimer is it's a fictitious story. As you would know, there's an overarching story and then there's underlying research, and we'll probably talk about that. So the entire story is completely fictitious, but you do tend to sort of look into that era and see who was around and maybe try to think about some characters. So I'll say there might be some similarities. So people have called me and saying, hey, that guy is that guy. I said, is that right? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Yes?
I really appreciated your putting in the definitions of various words, and also the maps. They were a big help. My favorite part was the little man in the beard sitting in the corner at the end of the book. I don't understand who he is.
So, I actually, that was one of my questions much farther down, which is, you do not tie all the questions up with a bow at the end, and many mystery readers want all of the loose ends tied up by the end. Did you make a conscious decision not to tie up loose ends?
The answer is yes. Yes. There are things that are left uncovered. There are a few mysteries, and I would say a sequel will probably answer some. In some ways, they're not. They are kind of, they branch out, they give you kind of a different feeling, but they don't come back to the main branch. I mean, it's just a kind of a style of writing. It left you wanting more. And if that has happened, I take that as a compliment. Hey, what happened to that guy? What happened to that guy? Yeah, it would have been nice to bring everything a nice happy ending. So I'll say it's not a happy ending per se, but
Some parts are not.
so there are 3 endings actually. There are 3 different endings. I don't know whether you noticed there. In my, as an author, there are 3 endings to the book, and we'll see what those
Okay.
things.
All right. Other questions before I go back to one of mine?
I think you already answered that. Is there going to be a sequel?
Yes. So is there a date for this fictitious sequel?
Not a date, because I won't say I'm writing a sequel yet.
Okay.
It's still formulating. I think I have most of the things in the head. There are a few things that I'm still not 100% sure.
We
but-
don't want it early, so
Right.
that's fine.
So hopefully maybe a year and a half, maybe late 2024 or maybe early 2025.
And when you said you appreciated the map, one of the things, because I don't know the geography well either, was the distances that get traveled in this book are much larger than you imagine, because we've lost our frame for how big India is. And obviously when they go to London, there's one thing, but they also are spending a lot of time in travel to go to particular places where there are additional clues that they need to address physically. And so I wanted to find out a little bit more about the feeling of all of India's different places, and you mark this a little bit by the specialty foods they eat, but can you talk a little bit about the different parts of India that come into the story and how they differ and just the distances involved?
Yeah, so we looked at the map, right? So Agra and Delhi, these are kind of the historic cities. They're kind of up in the north. In some respect, they're maybe north central, but generally they're considered north. And then if you look at where Shah Jahan's wife died, it's in central India. It's almost like 600 miles from Agra and Delhi. And then the cultural differences are there, and there are healthy differences. I mean, cultural variations are there. Food habits actually they do change. And the reason I use you will see food items being that experience. They're kind of enjoying. Even they're traveling by airplane in the flight. They are eating some food. And the whole idea is to give that the contextual the side of the feeling to the reader. Cultural differences. I mean, India is an ancient country. The ancient cultures there, and then of course there were invasions later on. I hardly consider myself an expert, but there were invasions later on, which came from the north, the western side. So the Persian invasions, the Mughal invasions, Turkic invasions, they all left their mark. And the culture became kind of composite culture. And then of course the British rule for 200 years, that also impacted the culture. So what we see now is more of a modern composite culture, but an underlying ancient culture that still prevails.
One of the critical pieces in terms of language is the need for someone to be on the team who can read Persian, and in particular ancient Persian, and that gives some complexity because it became surprising to me that not all of those relevant original documents had been translated. So I thought that was interesting that you had to involve a very diverse team in order to get the expertise required for the research.
One of my very favorite, I love to travel. I went to India in 2019 in Rajasthan and saw the Taj Mahal, which was never on my list of things that I needed to see. I want to see the pyramids, Taj Mahal, I didn't care. But when I got there, I was like, oh wow, and realized why so many people wanted to see it. That's not why I started talking. I started talking because of food, and so we traveled. Part of our travel was by train. And I had some of the best food on the trains. It wasn't like they handed you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something, real good, different food. It was
But
fascinating.
those must have been those special tourist trains,
Oh,
right?
probably, yeah, but, but they also, no, I understand that, but they also, one of my favorite parts of the trip was part of it was not on the special,
Okay.
tourist,
Okay.
ones. And it was, bunks up like this and
Oh, okay.
people sleeping
Oh,
and
you did
stuff, and I love that part too.
Nice.
That was, I thought, thoughtful for
No,
them
no.
to have us also do that.
Yeah.
So did you write down the names of the foods recommended as you were reading so that you could find them later?
I did not.
I think you'll need to go back.
Should I,
So I was gonna move on and talk about how you got published. So once you get it done, what's the path to
Yes.
have what we have here, and especially all the formats that you now have available?
Long process. I mean, you need to be very patient. So I mean, writing, I would say, is maybe 25–30%. Getting your first draft really done is maybe 25% of the work. Then going through really good reviews in terms of developmental reviews. You have to talk to professionals to do that. Development reviews, the copy editing, proof editing, the entire process. And it actually helps. It really helps. It takes your novel to a kind of a different level. Substance doesn't change, but you do get some very, very useful input. And then I'll say the most important is having beta readers. I had about 5 to 6 beta readers read the book. Iranians actually read the book, and then some of the Indian Americans read the book. So having beta readers, absolutely, it's a must. And then you got your final manuscript, and you say, now I can publish it. Now publishing, I'll say, publishing industry is changing in my opinion, in the way I've sort of understood. Going through the big 4, big 5, I mean, it's a long process. Going through the agent, it might have taken another 2 years. So self-publishing and guided publishing is now a great option, unless you want to sell, 10 million copies, 1 million copies, for which you have to have, HarperCollins behind you or somebody like behind you. But if you're really not aiming for that, then self-publishing and guided publishing is an excellent option. The processes are not too difficult. They are step-by-step processes. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Kindle Publishing, Apple, all of them offer the self-publishing option. So people are interested. I think they should pursue that without having to wait for a big publisher to support you. Not that you shouldn't do that, but it takes time.
So did you pursue getting an agent at all or not?
I did, but again, my experience is talking to agents is a volume thing. You have to write maybe 50, 100, 200 letters, and someday something will click, right? So I did try that, but then it could have taken maybe another 2 years if I'd waited. I said I'll go ahead and publish it myself.
And back to the formats, because large print is getting scarce, and you have both the regular print, the e-versions, and now an audio version, and those are all somewhat separate processes that you would need to learn if you're doing the self-publishing. So is there advice for potential authors in the audience about how you made that work, or was it really just learning another step?
I would say it's the latter. It's just learning another step. Once your basic manuscript is all set, it's just another format you're following. You might need some technical help if you're not too familiar. But other than that, it's a very fast process. With both Apple and Google as well as Kindle publishing, the process is very fast. Some technical things will happen. There are sometimes glitches. You have to get some help. But it's not that difficult. Audiobook, it's an interesting thing because you have to get the right narrator. But Audible offers wonderful set of narrators. You can really audition them. So I selected the 4 or 5, send them a chapter, so they send me their narration. Then I selected one. For this one, I really wanted kind of a neutral, international sounding accent, and I was very lucky I found it. So this process is also very interesting. Yeah, I would say either you have to be or get somebody who is a little technical savvy, but not too difficult at all.
Now it's your turn again. What questions have come to mind? Yes.
You mentioned some actual factual references. Are they also mentioned in the book?
Great question, because I think I was hoping somebody will answer about it. So, maybe if somebody asks a question, how much of this is fiction and how much of this is fact? If somebody asks it, I'll say all the documentary evidences are 100% accurate. And not only that, you will see the documentary evidence right in the book. When I was about to publish the book, I was talking to a few folks, should I put a bibliography in a book? But then, it's a novel, fiction novel, who puts a bibliography? So the goal was, the characters actually talk about the references. So that means they will talk about the publishing or the article or the book, including, he said, for example, Vijay Kumar says, hey Samir, go to Tavernier's book and look at page number so and so. You can actually do that, and somebody did that. There is a guy in London who is doing his PhD, and he said, while I was reading the book, actually I was going down. I mean, that's sometimes people don't enjoy doing that, but he was actually looking at the references, and he said, all of them absolutely tally. And that was my goal, that all the references have it. So, documentary reference are 100% accurate. The New York Times article reference by Dr. Marvin Mills, that is also actually 100% accurate. It's an interesting story about Marvin Mills, but maybe some other time. So that's accurate. A few other references such as the carbon dating, I'll say those are my investigation. I cannot really say whether that happened or that did not happen, but somebody did try to do carbon dating, but they were not successful.
But you haven't been in any tunnels recently, right?
Baltimore Tunnel.
Just checking. I'm not trying to do spoilers, but anyway. Other questions?
I was very impressed by your detailed descriptions of the clothing that they were wearing, the food that they were eating in present day. So do you go back to India often now, or how do you keep up with all this?
No, we don't go to India that often. It all depends. There have been gaps of 6-7 years. Sometimes I made like 3 visits in a year. My mom was not well, and actually she's not well right now, so I'm going actually very soon. So yeah, it all varies. As far as keeping up is concerned, with the modern times, with the internet and so much of flux of people traveling between the countries, it probably happened naturally. So I don't think I had to really think a lot. Sometimes yes, in particular cases, I did have to what they were wearing. But other than that, I would say with the movies and everything, it just came naturally.
So when you visit your mom, where does she live?
She's in Mumbai, Bombay. Yeah.
More questions?
So going back to your narrators, why did you select, and I'm going from the standpoint, I haven't read the book, so we know we have one male character. I'm assuming there's a female character in there some way. Why did you select one reader as opposed to 2 or 3 readers to the different characters?
For the audiobook?
Oh, for the audiobook?
Yes.
I think it's more expensive. Having one narrator and versus it's probably I could have done that, but it's a little more involved when you do that. The whole coordination between the 3 characters, three narrators. I mean, you will have almost like a director making sure things work. Maybe some technical challenges also there.
And the structure of your book is not a lot of individual stream of consciousness. It's not from a single, it's from more of an omniscient narration rather than just from a single character's experience or from 2 alternating or 3 alternating characters' experience. So you don't change narrative voices
Correct.
a lot in the book. So that might have been an argument against having multiple audio narrators.
But I might add an interesting. I have a talk coming up late. I think it's going to be pushed to May, where it's a YouTube channel and they're hosting me. They are actually going to read passages, and they are actually going to use different voices, male, female, and the younger guy, the older guy. So they want to, read passages from the book.
Will you let us know the channel when it comes?
Yeah, definitely. I'd be happy to.
I have a question. From your draft version to the final version, is the whole, some of the plot got changed, or how much difference between the first draft and the final?
I would say the plot doesn't change that much. Basic stuff doesn't change that much. The presentation does change, and sometimes.